Hey everybody, welcome to the Trinity Force podcast. My name is Punchinello. I am not Adam Puddlephobia Coxwell, because that guy is off doing who knows what with craft beer and triple distilling hops and shit. Screw that guy.
Yeah,
I'm
what
joined
a jerk.
by two
Doesn't even
better
show
guys. That's right. I'm joined by Cheer Jaden.
What's up?
Of course, a doctor.
Welcome.
How you guys doing?
Well,
Good, how are you, man?
Oh, I'm doing swell. Even more swell since the patch 5.17 notes came across.
I
Which
know,
is what we're going
right?
to talk about, because screw news and notes. I don't do that shit.
One
News
news.
and notes. I don't even know what's going on.
One piece of news. Heart of the Cards episode 1 is out.
I listened to that today, actually.
It's
As did
not
I.
bad for a first one.
No, it was good. It was good.
Alright.
I'm very happy.
I learned so much.
Yeah,
Smorking. I know exactly what smorking is now.
I learned way more about Hearthstone and my casualness having zero knowledge going in before that. It's like, okay, so I have a lot to pick up before I jump right into a bunch of stuff that I thought was going to be way easier to jump into. But whatever.
Yeah, you
Different
guys did
podcast.
a pretty good job of explaining things as you went. You couldn't possibly explain everything, because there's so many things to cover. But I felt like I was following along pretty well.
Yeah, we have some emails we got for a couple of the terms, so we'll be going over those in the next episode for people who weren't comfortable with them. But let's jump into 517.
All right, sounds good to me. Skarner's at the top of the list.
First and foremost, everybody's biggest fear right now,
I think
right?
everybody saw some nerfs coming for him. These all have to do with his passive, which is the Crystal Spires. The bonus movement speed, which was 100 at all levels, has been reduced to 70 to 120, scaling between levels 1 and 18. Bonus attack speed has been reduced. No, it's been changed throughout the flow of the game.
Yeah.
It was 48 to 150%. Now it's 43 to 160% across all levels. So a little bit less early and a little bit more later. Maximum mana restore is now 2% per second. And the position on the Jungle Spice Twisted Tree line have changed, but who cares about that?
They
Except
just
Dom.
nerfed this early game.
And they directly stated they wanted to nerf his early game because apparently he's too overbearing at all portions of the game. So nerf his early game, make his late game a little bit better to compensate. But
Looks like.
do you even think they needed to boost his late game anymore?
I think
I was
it's kind
surprised
of
they did.
irrelevant. Like, if you just add, 10 damage here and there
It's
on a
probably
tank's
not that
late
big a
game,
deal.
it doesn't do that much.
Right.
Early game, though, giving a champion finite weaknesses is kind of how you balance them. And I think that's what they did to Victor last patch, too. And I guess the champion has to have weaknesses. And that's what
that
they're
movement
trying
speed
to do.
reduction early is huge. How early was he ganking?
Whenever an opportunity for the most part presented itself and he had his E for the stun.
Before the change, I knew it was close to when he got his ultimate, because he couldn't do much besides
Right.
that unless somebody grossly overextended. So I'm wondering now, because his movement speed is about it breaks even from what it was before at around level 7.
Right.
So I'm wondering,
But at the
if
same
he ganks
time,
early now, is this going to hurt him a ton?
and yeah, that's gonna hurt him more if he's not within his own spires. But when he's within the spires, that little bit of missing move speed early, he's still gonna be moving faster on a baseline if nobody invades and takes one of his spires than almost any other champion that would just sit in the jungle. So there's still a lot of room to get around the map.
70 to 122 is I guess at 100 where it breaks even is 3/5. So 3/5 of 118. I can't do that off the top of my head, but it's past halfway. It's probably level 11 or so. So that's kind of the break even, which is pretty far into the game when you think about it. But the hotfix too was his base stats. This is an early game. It's pretty clear what they're trying to do. And no offense, but I guess it's not offensive. Tank junglers really shouldn't have those ridiculous early game win rates. Right. That's kind of why people want to play stuff like Lee Sin and Elise. So good on Ryan to recognize that.
It doesn't even. The whole premise of the champions like Lee Sin and Elise is that their early game is so overpowering to compensate for a lackluster 38 minutes plus. Mm-hmm. And Skarner didn't have that issue, at least pre-nerf. So
he's not a bruiser too, he's a tank. Bruisers kind of shine in mid game, tanks like late game and mid game, and stuff like Lee Sin at least likes early game and mid game. And having a bruiser that's good early game, good mid game, and good late game is not very reasonable.
Right.
So Azir.
Do you see him? Or do you see Skarner falling out of the meta with these? Or is he still going to be relevant?
No, he's still strong. Lee counters them, and people can actually play Lee in high elo. So, like, Lee counters Skarner. If anybody actually wants an explanation before we get hate mail, he beats him pretty
Before
badly.
picking Lee and then losing to Skarner.
He beats him pretty bad early game, and then late game if Skarner ever tries to engage, like, kind of ahead of his team, which he has to at times, or if Skarner, like, flashes in, Lee just kicks Skarner back into his team, and especially after the, like, percentage max HP stuff Lee got to his ult, it's pretty
You
good.
can boot Skarner back in for a bunch of bonus extra damage.
Bowling bugs.
Yeah.
Alright.
All right,
I like
Azir
that.
time.
Yeah, it's your time.
Bowling bug, that's good.
Bowling
All
bug.
right, Azir. So he's got some bug fixes later because he's got bug fixes in every patch. But the kit changes are as follows: base movement speed reduced from 335 to 325, and Conquering Sands enemies no longer take additional damage being hit by soldiers beyond the first one.
It's good. Like,
Cool.
Azir's supposed to be a control mage, and when he came out, like, he could do a lot of things. And this change, reducing movement speed, makes him more of a control mage because he actually has to play more safe. And then, like, a patch or two ago, when they made it so he couldn't, like, fly into people and knock them up, also kind of, like, you need to be a control mage. You need to stop doing this. So, like, it looks like they're trying to make him a
doing
control mage.
flashy assassin plays.
Stop making flashy assassin plays on a late game champion that deals damage.
That's right.
But
Can't
yeah,
have that.
trying to make him a control mage. Most control mages have relatively low base move speed, so it's pretty standard, I guess.
Yeah, it's good that you pointed that out. The more I think about it, he has to play more along the lines of prevent people from getting to him, as opposed to having an easier time to disengage once they're already on top of him. He still has tools, but he really wants to keep people at bay, like a sieger would normally do. Bard's next up. W Caretaker Shrine mana cost has been reduced. It used to scale upwards from 100. It's now 90 mana at all ranks. And Magical Journey cooldown has been reduced from 20 to 16. It's now at 18, 17, 16, 15, 14.
So they gave Bard a little bit of love, but does this make him any better?
Dave gave Bard so much love since he's been
I know
released.
has he gotten nothing but
He's
nothing
got
but buffs?
buffs, I
Yeah.
think. So Caretaker Shrine doesn't matter because you build tier on Bard. So into that famous tier mallet CZ up
That's
banner.
right.
But no, this does help lane phase. It's only 10 early, but I think you max Q, so it doesn't help that much. Like, maybe this is like a mid-game mana buff. But
I honestly didn't play with enough Bard to notice his mana problems. I didn't feel like he had an overabundance of mana in lane. He kind of did have to watch what he was casting. But his sustain with W was just A-okay. So
Gotcha.
now that's even cheaper. He could be. He's not gonna
Now, what's Bard's usual?
compete with Soraka. But
What's Bard's usual like skill leveling order? It's Q and then either E or W.
he's going to say if you don't max this, it's only 10
Right.
until level 8. So that's after level 8, you're probably not in lane phase in the support too. So this is
I also
basically I see
Sorry.
it as 10 mana if you don't max W.
I assume you're putting some more points in a W if the lane is going poorly as well.
I would
Not
think
maxing
so.
Not maxing it second, but maybe putting an extra point in it.
I mean, nowadays with the changes in the cooldown, you can shave. You're still shaving 4 seconds off of Magical Journey total, which you're getting a benefit of 6 seconds at max rank as compared to what it is in the past, which is just quality of life more than anything.
I don't feel like Magical Journey buff him at all.
I
Maybe
don't
a
either.
fight like Angston and Baron fight where you might get those 2 journeys off, but I really don't see that happening much.
Yeah, there's not a lot of
14
fights where, man, I really need Magical Journey to come off cooldown.
Right. 14 seconds is still quite a while, and you can
is.
get that lower with some CDR, but again, what does Magical Journey necessarily give you when you actually get in the fight as well? So,
I mean, maybe it helps with his roaming, but
right.
is the 2 seconds really going to matter that much?
Right.
Can you not sit there and set up that gank for 2 seconds longer?
And the biggest thing is like their buffs and not nerfs, and sometimes it doesn't take like a lot to get a champion back into viability, especially
Just
if
enough.
other supports do get nerfed. Because in League, it isn't like something's good or bad. It's stuff is always contesting other stuff, and just sometimes something doesn't have to necessarily get buffed. If the things that counter it or the other contested picks get nerfed, it can come back into favor. So maybe, I actually haven't read through these, maybe we'll see some other support changes.
I don't... Yeah, there's Janna.
There's Janna.
Alright.
I think that was it. Anyways, Darius is next up. Hemorrhage has been renamed. Don't care.
It's
Decimate. Fixed a bug where summoner spells will disable while winding up. So now you can flash while winding up, I suppose. Nice change. Crippling Strike is the big one.
This one...
100% of Crippling Strike's mana cost and 50% of its cooldown upon killing the target.
So now, if you use your W to last hit something, it was a free mana cost. And you can use it again way quicker than normal. But what's the cooldown on this right now anyway? I'm going to look that up.
Well, how often are you using Crippling Strike to finish somebody, though?
A person, you don't need it. You don't need it.
Ultimate.
Yeah, but you don't need it necessarily to finish a person. If you're using W on a person, you're using it as an auto attack reset, sort of like you do with Jax and his W. The other portion of that is now you can actually use your W to last hit without necessarily pushing the wave. So like instead of using your Q to last hit something, if you're in a bad spot or you don't know what you're doing, so you're pushing the wave in a situation where it's pushing towards you and you can basically zen them out, you get a little bit of a reprieve if you want to W instead of Q, but it'll make his last hitting a little bit easier now that he has 0 mana cost to it if he can actually land it, which it increases your attack damage by a pretty decent amount. So
the Q buff is nice. Anything that like gives the champion more combos is always good, and just being able to flash combo into some of his auto attack resets or pull or something like that is really strong. Especially like if you get a gank early and you get summoner advantage on your lane at like 3 or 4 and you hit 6, and you can go for like a flash Q play knowing that they don't have flash, and then maybe pull and ult them where you can't just like walk up to them to get that play. It may change the order too. Like previously on a play like that, you'd want to flash pull, and then getting your Q off is kind of awkward at that point. They can dodge the blade or run on top of you, but just being able to flash Q guarantees that if you need to hit the end of the blade, you can always hit the end of the blade.
So Crippling Strike cooldown at rank 1 is 9, and at max rank it's 5 seconds. So if you actually use it and you get the kill with something, you're having it, which is not bad. I mean, that's a 2.5 second W. I mean, effectively, if you rank your Crippling Strike second, you could last hit with W every 2.5 seconds without any CDR. That's what the cooldown is on it.
I'm trying to think of what this remedies for Darius in lane, though. I mean, was he having a problem, lasting under turret? Because he certainly doesn't have a problem pushing the wave.
Right. He just passively
Is this
pushes
just...
the wave if he
I
uses
guess
the
this would
ability,
just be for better trading, so he can use this to last a minion and drive it up to trade. Since they took some of his trading potential away with the wind up on Q.
Perhaps, and at the same time, he might be punished a little bit less. Let's say if he uses W to last hit something because he didn't think he was going to get it, or he's trying to secure a cannon minion or something like that, and whatever champion decides to go in on him and is within his Q range, like at the handle, so it's not going to do any damage, he might be able to get that W off and slow them to walk out or to chase them if they wanted to dip out. I don't know. They gave W a little bit extra oomph, and it does something other than just, hey, I can use this as a slow or an auto attack reset. Now, did he need that? I don't know until I get to play around with it, but it's kind of nice. I mean, it's definitely quality of life.
You could combo too, like if it's 5 seconds at max, assuming you have Black Cleaver 2 and it's less, you could combo and your combo is like 3.5. The cooldown W is like 3.5 at that point, and ult them and W'd be back up again, and you could W and then your W'd come off cooldown, so you could ult another person and W them. So that's kind of interesting for mid game and late game.
People again forget it adds 40% of your bonus AD as physical damage onto it too, and that's at least when Darius was next basic attack deals 40% AD. It is your total AD. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, as bonus physical damage. And in the past, people have used this more so as, okay, you go into trade, auto immediately if especially if they start to run. Auto immediately use it again, and now that he has a little bit of extra range, that's kind of nice too. But you use it again as an auto attack reset, so you can trade even harder than you would otherwise. And it's sort of a similar situation with Jax. If you were able to get off basically 2 extra hits, and one of those extra hits has extra damage on it, and they can't trade you for that extra, it just makes for an even more like oppressive sort of laning situation if he's able to build that advantage. Because once you have somebody's health down like that, especially once he's getting around level 6, you don't want to be near Darius.
I will say, even for, like, sometimes people say, oh, like, last hitting Iron Tower doesn't matter if you're a good player, and for a lot of champions it doesn't, but having auto attack resets is incredibly useful when champions have awkward last hitting under tower. And sometimes you have 2 creeps you need to hit quickly, and he has really, really low attack speed, so the AA reset under tower is really important for him. And you can AA reset one of them, hit another one, and not lose mana for it. So that's actually really useful. I noticed it a lot more in champions with really, really low attack speed.
And that's especially true now. If there's a big wave there, he could effectively get 3 or 4 of these off if he needed to, as long as he was using it properly, which that is potentially 4 last hits he wasn't getting otherwise.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go on to Draven.
Yes, the glorious Church of Draven.
Your
First
favorite,
2 changes
your
are
favorite
troll.
SADC.
So troll. Okay, so yeah, all passive changes for Draven. Upon reaching 150 stacks, the team is now notified that Draven's at that many stacks.
So in case
at 150, so you got a notification at 150, and then every 100 stacks afterwards, 250, 350, so on and so on. The team knows, hey, Draven's like this many stacks, so you better let him get that kill.
Right. In case your Draven hasn't been telling you that he has X amount of stacks to be able to use, which I actually see quite a bit. They'll be like, hey, I have this many stacks. Can we get a kill? Because that'd be great. You're going to be seeing that, and you're also going to have Draven passively yelling at you, which is wonderful.
The game yells at you for him.
Now, has anybody gotten to see how exactly this notifies it? Like, does it throw a banner up at the top, or...
Oh, it's got to be in the chat, I assume.
Okay, I don't know.
Those notifications are done so in there.
It might have like Draven actually say something in game too.
That would be so awesome.
You're like a Cyanal, you can hear it no matter where you are.
The enemy team hears it.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay, so the next one is something similar. The enemy team is also, or Draven's team is also notified when he cashes in on at least 150 stacks. So not only does he tell you when he has the stacks, he then boasts how much gold he got.
I really hope there's some sort of audio cue for that, and he does a jig or something. Be wonderful.
Last change is Draven gets 2 bonus stacks of adoration if he kills 6 minions in a row without dropping a spitting axe. So good.
So if you can actually play Draven's minigame, you just got a benefit out of it.
Even more of a benefit for playing the minigame, which... I mean, there was no reason not to play the minigame before.
Right.
So
all the extra damage.
No offense, like, if you can't juggle, you shouldn't play Draven. So this should buff every Draven player.
Exactly. I mean, personally, I'm not sure why. The first 2 changes are nice. They just kind of fit into Draven's theme, and I mean, they don't add that much besides, people that actually want to communicate with their team. Like, hey, maybe I should let Draven have this kill. Maybe not. Maybe I would just secure it. That's what I would do if I'm playing support. I'll just secure the kill. Fuck Draven. But as Draven, I want people to know that I've got all the stacks and I'm getting all the gold.
Mm-hmm.
And who doesn't? Alright, so that's it for Draven.
This is a bunch of people that you play, Punch. Draven into Fizz, or formerly played, I guess.
I just dabbled around with Fizz when he was AD, which brings up these changes, because RIP AD Fizz.
Yeah, that's dead in the ground now.
Urchin Strike. The ratio has been increased from 0.3 ability power to 0.35 ability power. Seastone Trident on hit damage has been changed from 10 to 50 to 10 to 30 on hit, but the ratio has been increased from 0.25 to 0.3. And Shum the Waters no longer amplifies physical damage. Wah, wah, wah. Still amplifies magical damage. So hey, Riot really wants you to play AP Fizz. Please, for the love of God, build AP on Fizz.
So Q straight buff to AP. The W at, let's see, it's 20 at max rank. So at max ranked in 0.5 ratio. I mean, at 400 AP, it's better. I guess if you're building AP, you'll get 400 at a couple items. So that's okay. The ult is a nerf to AP and AD, though. I know a lot of players, when they're playing mid, they actually take armor runes against Fizz because of how much AD damage he does early game and mid game. And you might not think about this because you go, AP Fizz, he only does AP damage. Especially early game and in lane, he does a lot of physical damage. So maybe the AP nerfs will make up for it, but I guess it nerfs AP and AD, and not just AD as some people may think.
Because the Claude isn't here, I feel like I have to say an obligatory AD Fizz is now dead in the water.
Yep.
No, that's a good point to bring up. I mean, yeah, even AP Fizz is doing a lot of W auto attacks, maximizing on that flat damage that he gains. But I see that reduction in the amount of damage really kills the Blade of the Ruin King by, which was a huge staple for the AD Fizz build.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can play AD Fizz at all right now.
I'm wondering if Trinity 4 still has a place on him or not.
Trinity in a tank would be the only thing you could build.
I mean, yeah, he's still going Sheen first, but
I think they're buffs to AP too, especially if you count the Q buff. Like, AP is already pretty good and gets French playing LCS, and it's really, I mean, there are a lot of Fizz mains in my solo Q games. So, like, AP is already good and it's getting a small buff, and AD is getting a nerf. I see no reason to play AD now.
I actually haven't seen it in a long time. The only time I saw it was in professional play, where you would see it every so often in the top lane. But the last time they made changes to Fizz, I just gave up on it. Said, well, that was fun. I'm not going to mess around with that anymore. So speaking of top laners, getting played in professional level,
Gangplank.
Power Kid got some changes. The delay between casts has been increased by 0.25 seconds, and the armor penetration was reduced from 60% to 50%.
All right.
60%. That was totally reasonable.
This delay in itself hurts the combo, which a lot of people are doing with GP right now, where they chuck a powder keg at an in-between point between where they want to throw their max distance keg, because they're trying to poke with it. And as the one's counting down, they cue the closer one, which then sets off the farther one, so you can poke somebody from afar with your E. And then it nerfs the damage on it from armor pen.
Oh, so it's not going to reduce the on activation damage, but all the follow-up.
But the issue is now you have an extra quarter of a second that far barrel isn't going to be down, so people might actually like muck up the combo and not get it off.
That and the enemy that you're using against has more time to react.
Quarter second to react, which is great for all of us in the Midwest whose ping is
better ping. Yeah, I didn't see a lot of people really taking advantage or contesting Gangplank to try and last the barrels. Gangplank's got an inherent advantage against most of his opponents because most of his opponents are melee and he can, shoot his power keg. But I feel like this does open up a little bit of counterplay, a little bit more counterplay for him.
Anything that adds 0.5 to, like, let's say your combo takes 5 and you needed exactly 5 to kill the person, now you might not. Or let's say you miss like an auto attack by 0.25 seconds that could have killed a person, now you won't get that. So anything that slows you down, and that you just can't do other things like auto attack or use spells.
I also do want to say I feel like the double powder keg combo to explode was pretty fast to do anyway. Like, it wasn't necessarily instant, but it was pretty close to it if you were quick with keg placement. So now you're definitely going to be able to see that coming a little bit more, which is nice, especially because if a Gangplank gets rolling and he can hit you with that, and with the game we were playing the other night, I think who was I even playing that game? I ended up I was playing Lissandra, and I think just the powder keg combo did 3/4 of my health.
I don't think Riot wanted Gangplank to be somebody who just put down his barrels and attempted to one-shot somebody. I think they wanted them to be like barrels he snuck in bushes and they'd explode, or zone people in fights, or do cool things with. So maybe like Gangplank
set up some utility.
Yeah, Gangplank that, like, setting something down and trying to one-shot somebody with the barrels. I don't know. Probably not good.
A little ridiculous.
Now, Horse, have you seen more Gangplanks being built full damage rather than sort of the bruiser route that I think Riot was going for with this champion? Because I've noticed way more GPs just going full damage.
Yeah, Trinity
I
forces
saw
synergies.
mostly bruiser on release. Recently, I've seen a lot more full damage. I think it's greedier, though. I don't know. I really don't know where I stand on it. I think the positioning required to play full damage is difficult, and if you're not like a really good player in versus lane Gangplank, you'll just get punished and die 10 times. So bruiser might be better unless you're really comfortable with them.
And the arm penetration reduction, I feel like they set it really high just because they weren't sure
How it was gonna
how
go.
easy it was to get that off, and now they've got a better idea.
Well, I think it became a situation too where once people figured out how to do the quick combo, they were able to get off way more consistently than maybe Riot had expected in the first place. So now they're taking back some of the pen on that to make up for it, which, it's getting double slapped with this change. But realistically, that's probably a good thing. And I'd rather see GP played more as a bruiser than a full damage sort of barrel assassin.
Pirates,
We already have a barrel throwing person.
That's right.
Pirates get in your face and fight you and I don't know, get drunk and eat oranges and do stuff. They aren't. I don't know. They aren't. I feel like he's a hitman right now who just tries to assassinate you and walk up to you and one shot you, and that's not a pirate.
That's for ninjas.
I mean, hey, it works for a special ops skin, but not for anything else.
Yeah, I feel you.
All right, Garen's next up. He's got a few changes. Base movement speed was reduced from 345 to 340. Bonus movement speed on Decisive Strike has been reduced from 35% to 30%. Fixed a bug where attempting to attack the inhibitor or nexus with Decisive Strike wouldn't trigger the attack. Change on Courage. The passive bonus stacks twice as fast on alternate maps. Alright. Judgment. Right-clicking on a target while spinning should now put you in closer to your target.
Okay.
Nice change.
Yeah.
And Massing Justice. Tooltip reformatted to read deals 28, 33, 40% of the target's missing health rather than whatever it said before, which is hard to math.
Right. That you
So now
actually
we have a better
had the
understanding of
borderline
what it
do the
is.
math for.
I'm not doing the math. I've tried doing the math before.
I'm going to step
wrong.
on a soapbox here for a second. And
Go for it.
Garen's something that really frustrates me because he's had points where I guess low elo complains about him a lot because he's really troublesome and annoying. And a year or two ago, he's really strong in low elo and people consider him strong. Never saw him in solo queue, never saw him in competitive play, and he got nerfed. Right now, he doesn't do well in my solo queue games, and I probably am not going to see him in competitive play with his current kit, but he's getting nerfed because, I don't know, people in bronze and silver can't deal with him, and that's... I don't know, maybe Garen just is a champion that shouldn't ever see competitive play like Shaco or something else, but it's frustrating.
I think I got the general idea of what you're saying, but your internet took a shit.
Yeah, I
That
kind of
should be okay for the audio. But yeah, I mean, I hear exactly what you're saying. Garen in a high skill level game is not really that scary.
Well, and that's kind of been Garen's
He's so binary.
sad tale since the
Right.
beginning. Even
He's
when
got
I started
one thing
playing,
he wants to do,
Right.
is get to you.
Even when
and
I
then
started
silence you for a
playing
little
this
bit
game,
and spin.
Garen was the pub stomp champion, and that was the first game I ever played of League. I played Galio, had no idea what I was doing, was playing in a solo lane versus Garen, and I kept dying, and I was like, wow, that character's OP. And then the dude who got me into League was like, no, he's just really good against bad people. And then I felt really bad about myself. But it's true.
I mean, he thrives on stomping the lane. He's got to get ahead early, otherwise he's not doing shit. Because he
Right.
needs to build that unkillable juggernaut that annoys the enemy team that can just kind of force his way to the back line in order to have some impact on the fight.
Right.
I mean, I actually did play Garen last Thursday, just as a hey, why not pick? Because we were banning him. So hey, the enemy team didn't ban him. Might as well pick Garen and see what happens. I mean, it worked great because I got a lead in the lane. But if I'm going against somebody that knows what they're doing and the guy I was playing against didn't, then that
you can take advantage
Garen's
of
not
it.
going to work out. I'm just going to be basically a damage sponge that can't sponge a lot of damage come team fights.
Right. And that's been an issue. It also used to be at there's certain points after they buffed Garen, I don't remember when. I guess it was right after his rework. A lot of people were complaining because he just rushes past my entire team and goes for my carry, and it's like, well, you could peel better or do other things. Like, why are you letting him do that? I don't know. I like the judgment change though on his spin, so that now you can actually right click somebody, because in the past it used to just get that whoever you're right clicking on in range for your judgment to be hitting them, and now if you're actually moving closer to them, you don't have to click on the ground around them. But at the same time,
you right click past them before.
Yeah. At the same time, it wasn't that big of a deal to right click past them. Realistically, I mean, I could see at lower elo how that might be an issue, but it's sort of the same situation with a character like Olaf, where you just need to know the right place to position your mouse when you're using an ability like your throw, and in Garen's place, his spin. But now you don't have to do that as much because you right click somebody and you get closer to them.
Any last soapbox thoughts?
You fell off your soapbox halfway through.
Yeah, I don't know. It's frustrating to me when a champion doesn't see play in a high level solo queue and they don't see competitive play and then they get nerfed. Same thing happened to Katarina. She got nerfed like 3 times when she wasn't really an issue in high elo, and she got picked like once in LCS by Fnatic maybe. It's probably like just a pick the other team wouldn't expect, or a cheese or something, but she wasn't a contested pick at all, and it's just, I don't know. I have a lot of friends who play Katarina, or friends who would like to play Garen and stuff, and they can't get into their solo queue games and play these champions without like fear of losing LP. And maybe Riot has to strike a balance between people at a high level fearing of losing LP and people at a low level feeling frustrated playing against these champions, but it sucks that they have to make the champion not competitively viable to do that.
I
think that's just the problem with the binary nature of Garen.
I mean, that's not just for a character like Garen. That's also a Moo, for example. And I almost feel like it's a kind of a good thing to have a character that isn't necessarily as great as Garen per se. Like let's say Garen isn't seen at all at high level, which is for the most part true, except for that one guy that is really good at Garen apparently. If there's a champion that's not seen at a high level and he dominates lower levels, I'm kind of okay with that, because it almost acts as a learning curve to be like, hey, once you know how to deal with this, you deserve to go forward.
It's like in WoW, if they put in a monster that ran at 90% movement speed and you had to fight it on a hunter tutorial boss, as long as you knew how to kite and strafe, you would never let it hit you because you move at 100% and moves at 90. But if you're a bad hunter and you clicked S and you backpedaled, it would always kill you. And that's kind of what Garen is to me. He's like that stone monster that maybe like teaches you how to play the game because you need to learn how to kite and your team needs to learn how to kite, and then he's not hard to deal with.
He could be in that bush, but he could not be. I got a face check to find out.
Don't get me wrong, I understand people being kind of frustrated if they have to go into that, but I think that frustration stems more from a lack of general knowledge, or a lack of just... I don't want to always hit on a lack of knowledge for this sort of situation, because it kind of seems like
just
a cop
not
out.
Knowing what good a counterpick would be,
or not even a counterpick, just not knowing how to potentially deal with X champion that wants to do this every time he's picked. Because realistically, what else does Garen want to do than run at someone?
So not knowing how when to peel.
Terrible. Like, I actually think he's pretty average right now, and I thought he was bad before. So I think in a high level of play, he's better than he was before. But like, it'd be kind of cool to have a patch where I see Garen in the LCS, and he's cool. He yells Demacia. It'd be very exciting for Twitch chat, but I fear that day will never come.
I brought up the counterpick because we touched on Katarina, and I never felt a reason to ban Katarina just because of how easy it was to pick a stun, just shut her down. If I get support, then I get a support a fair amount of time in solo queue, and I see first pick Katarina on the enemy team, I'm going to pick someone like Lulu, who's got multiple ways to stop her. And it works.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like that's the issue that a lot of people have, is some of these power picks, they don't know what to pick against or what works against it.
I love iBarger's comment in Twitch chat where he's like, coming from a low elo player, I completely agree with Shira. Don't compromise the good players because lower level players can't handle it. You're everything that's right with low elo.
Alright, let's move on to Gragas before we get too many angry emails.
Too late. They're coming. All right, Gragas change. The only change was to his W. The W damage is down. It was scaling from 8 to 12%. It's now 8% at all ranks. So I kind of felt like they already nerfed. I should check the wiki for this, but I felt like they already nerfed his base damage.
Yeah.
And as a result, we've seen a huge drop off in Gragas. Not so much in pro play, but
Here's where I stand on Gragas. They've nerfed him a couple of times, and as somebody who jungles a lot in solo queue, he's really not a contested pick anymore. For his base stats are lower, he struggles to pressure against Elise and Lee Sin and Rek'Sai in certain matchups now, and his 2v2 is a lot weaker because they've nerfed a lot of his values early. Why he's good in pro play is kind of what we were talking about in Garen earlier. The kiting is so good in those games that being able to displace one person is a really, really, really big deal. And sometimes if you don't have like a Sivir ult or a Gragas ult or something like that in competitive play, it's really hard to make things happen when you're ahead. So, like, I think that's kind of why we see Garen competitive, but why I haven't seen him solo queue much, just because there's so much priority on stuff like that.
And Gragas.
I do like that they're doing this because I want them to keep his identity, and as like a pro play champion, he is picked to I guess displace a team and disengage, or to displace one person and isolate them. And they're not taking that away from him; they're just toning down his early game. So they're letting him keep his identity, but just toning down his power level, which is fine with me.
So with here, let's see. I want to with the W change to being 8% at all levels, is the only change on his W now just increased?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, I'm looking
per level.
All he'd be getting is damage reduction per level now, and there is some bonus magic damage plus whatever percent of the max health. So like like the magic damage that it normally does starts at 20 at rank 1, and it gets up to 140 bonus damage plus a percentage of their max health. But now at the no max health scaling,
You think an E second?
yeah, potentially. I mean, you're still getting a bunch of damage reduction, but the damage reduction is going to be more meaningful late game anyway.
So what does E give you per level now? Cooldown change on that?
The cooldown stays to stock 12 seconds.
Okay.
And the
Alright.
cooldown on Drunken Rage does go down with level. So it starts at 8, it gets to 4 at max rank.
Oh,
People
that's
are
pretty good.
maxing W or putting a couple points and other stuff to clear, and then putting points in W just for the
Right.
burst. So that's probably not going to happen anymore.
But if it goes down to 4 seconds,
Maybe.
I mean, yeah, you're still going to be able to get off potentially 3 Drunken Rages in the time it takes you to body slam.
yeah. Let's move on to Janna. So Janna's got a few changes. First of all, it was a bug with her passive, where it was not immediately falling off for allies moving away from her.
I've noticed that.
Have you?
Yeah. Depending on, I think it was her winter skin, little snowflakes or something. Looks like they appear near your
it's
feet.
really noticeable.
Yeah, and because you can see it super easy, I'd be running around in the jungle at the start of the game since nothing's going on and just staring at what's going on. I would be moving away from her, and I'd still be moving at the same speed.
Yeah.
it is noticeable. I noticed it playing Janna. People on top of me, because you can kind of see the thing underneath them, the visual indicator.
Q was changed. The minimum range on Howling Gale has been changed from 1,100 to 850, and the bonus range while charging increases from 20% increase per second to 35% increase per second.
Nerf.
Can you math that? What's the maximum range now?
Well, I'm not mathing this.
Damn it!
Oh, it's a nerf, because
seconds?
usually you just
Yeah,
want to double tap it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You get it off for the instant CC activation.
Change for Monsoon. It was 1.8 ability power over 3 seconds. Now the ratio is 1.5 ability power for 3 seconds. So a little bit of a healing reduction there, but I think majority of the Monsoon's usage was to disengage.
Right.
So
The
Hasn't
heal
been affected.
is more of a secondary portion
Right.
than
That's
it
nice to
was.
have.
Yeah, I mean it's just sort of adding insult to injury on, hey, you didn't kill the person you were chasing, and now they're getting healed a little bit as they run past me.
I'll make a
No,
note
think
on
about it.
this. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
Alright.
go ahead.
So at the beginning of season 4, if anybody remembers, Riot changed a lot of the champions, especially supports. So a lot of their utilities scaled with AP. Lulu got a more percentage slow with AP. Janna got some stuff with AP. Her E shield scales with AP now and some other stuff. So Riot clearly wanted supports to build AP. Over that period, we've had Straka mid, we've had Lulu mid and top, and we've continuously seen Lulu's ratio has been lowered and her base value is higher. Janna's ratio is lowered and then tweak Q and raise base values and stuff like that. And I don't know if Riot's ever going to try and do this again and let support scale with AP, but I think they're clearly saying, like, with the Lulu, the Straka mid, and reworking her, and these Janna changes, like, we fucked up.
Well, I don't know if they want to take all the usefulness from AP away. I felt like when they actually made that change, they wanted to shift the power of AP from damage to utility, and they just seemed to do a poor job of doing that because all the damage ratios were still too high when they added these utility ratios as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was the huge problem with Lulu mid, is you've got somebody that does, pretty good damage early, and then that damage is going to scale with the AP she's buying, and then her utility scales hugely as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. It's just interesting because they gave all these supports things that scaled with AP, and now they've just continuously removed them like 2 years after doing it. Mm-hmm. Just over and over. I can't really think of a champion that's got their ratios increased in the support role since that happened either. It's just been like ratios removed and base values raised.
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't think of one either.
Weird.
Anyways.
Alright, Jax. E mana cost is lower.
Janna's still good. Keep
It's
playing
nice.
Janna.
It lets you spam it in lane like a little bit more. 70 to 50 is pretty noticeable, especially since your W is so low in cost. I think it's like 30 or 40. So like every 2 E's you would have cast before, you may get an extra W. And stuff like that adds up. Useful.
Oh, wait, what were you referring to?
His E. Can you hear me?
Oh, we're talking about
Yeah,
Jax now.
Jax.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I
Jax.
didn't say the Jax changes. My bad. Okay, so Jax, Counter-Strike. Mana cost has been reduced as Horse Jax is alluding to. It's reduced early from 70 to 50, but it scales back up to 90, which is
90.
what it was at before. So, yeah. You can get more usage out of E early.
And it's funny because I love playing Jax, and I have this habit of I'll play Jax like crazy for a while, and then I don't know what happens. I end up playing something else, and I kind of forget Jax is around, and then a little change like this comes back, and I'm like, man, I really miss playing that champion that I do bad on every once in a while in the early game, and then still come back and do great in the late game, because as long as you stay in the game long enough, he's a monster.
It was Horse's comment about Fiora that made me reminded me of Jax.
Yeah.
Like, just play Jax against Fiora. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god, Jax
And
exists.
now the Counter-Strike change makes that even easier to do.
He is a nice lane too. Like if you're having trouble with Jax in the early game, his counter strike is really useful for doing the camp start in the top lane, and you just counter strike in a camp start, and you go like blade 4 or 5 pot or shield 4 or 5 pot, and a lot of matchups are not too bad on him.
Well, and that's the other thing too. If it isn't just that certain matchups, I think certain matchups are seen as way worse on him than they potentially are, and if you're actually good at Jax, it's way more of a skill matchup than people give it credit for, especially if you know how to thread the Q auto insta W, or the double attack as soon as you hit 6, double attack into Q instant W for all the dump damage. And you'd be surprised that people that aren't used to playing with Jax, especially when he falls out of favor, don't know how to deal with that, and then you end up getting a small advantage. And then Jax is like, oh, hey, remember when my early game was supposed to be weak and now you're zoned out because you can't get close to me? I'm now going to have extra mana from not blowing through all of it early with Counter-Strike, and I can free farm.
And this is not the third patch in a row, not the third straight patch, but for the last 3 patches that Jax was in, he's gotten buffed.
Worlds is coming.
In 5.12,
Yeah, Worlds is coming.
Armor and magic resist increased, and then in 4.21, which wasn't that long ago, Counter-Strike's cooldown was reduced.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, those buffs are going to stack up. I do expect to see Jax. Well, I guess it depends on how the Juggernauts go, huh? I mean,
Games are fast right now.
With these Darius buffs, what was that?
Games are fast right now. Jax has really awkward timings, and like, I don't know, Trinity Force, he finished 12 to 18 depending on the game. Mm-hmm. And Jax usually wants to get 1 or 2 Dorns, so it's a little delayed. if you don't have a Maokai or some of the other contested top picks, you really don't have a lot of TP pressure until he finishes that. And in competitive play or high-level play where the games are 35 minutes, can you really go through half of the game not having TP pressure, or not having as much TP pressure from your top lane? Maybe. Like, Jax is strong enough that he's always on that line. Like, is it worth taking him and dealing with this? But I personally don't know. I'm not an LCS coach, but he's getting closer, certainly.
I will.
Good question.
I do like him a bit more in solo queue, though. If you can pay attention, you know somebody's potentially wanting to teleport. You can also disrupt with E as well if they're really, because how many times have, and this is probably not as common, you know, in platinum, or lower platinum and lower rather than where you're at, but some people teleport in really stupid spots, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful when you have a champion that can disrupt them, because then it's just egg all over the enemy's face and they're very upset.
All right, we got a lot more champions to go.
We have a ton of champions
Let's
to
take the
go.
pace here. So Kalista changes. W passive has been increased from 6 seconds to 10 seconds, and the passive damage has been decreased at early levels. It was 12 to 20% scaling. It is now 10 to 20% scaling of the target's maximum health. And Fate's Call, her ultimate, has been increased
By
from the
30
cooldown
seconds
of
at rank 1.
90 at rank 1 to 120 at rank 1, and it's still 60 seconds cooldown at max rank.
So it doesn't change late game, but now you can't use Fate's Call nearly as much early, which isn't just a nerf if you want to engage, but it's also a nerf if, say, your support ends up getting in a bad spot and you use it to get away. Then you have to wait 30 seconds longer to potentially save them again if they do something stupid, or to engage if the enemy commits too hard.
So Kalista's
Or
a
is running.
difficult
Yeah, anytime I
champion.
see...
Oh. Alright, so Kalista's a difficult champion to play right now, like if you don't get a lead. Or you're not even her head. She's really, really hard to play from behind. And they're not touching her late game, but they're touching her early game. So anything that makes it harder for her to not be even or ahead is a nerf to Kalista, because after the passive changes a few patches ago and how she plays schematically, like, you don't want to be behind on Kalista, and they're making it harder to be ahead, I guess.
That's exactly the point I wanted to make. I'm glad you brought that up. Anytime I see laning changes for a mid-game power spike ADC, or I should say laning phase nerfs, it's kind of a red flag for me. Kallista's highest power point is at her 2 items. When she gets those first 2 items, that's when she's strongest. And if she has a harder time in lane now, those 2 items are going to get delayed. So her strongest point is going to get delayed, and it's not going to be as powerful. And like you said, her late game is really not that scary, assuming you have the right comp. If you've got something to lock her down, then she doesn't have enough damage to scare you off of her.
Right.
That's how
If
they
you've got
toned down.
a team of people that just run at her, then she can kite all day. So
That's how they toned down Corki's power level too. They just brought down like Q damage early, and they put a delay on it, and they did some other stuff. So Corki's kind of similar. 2 item power spike, 1 item power spike, around that area. All right, Lux. No, Karma.
I was gonna Karma first.
Karma.
Focus Resolve cooldown has been decreased from 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. It's now 12 at all ranks. Some Karma love.
I don't even really know what Karma does.
Focused
Elimination
Resolve.
does.
Yeah, it's the tether route. So
Okay.
now it's going to be the same cooldown, but the cost just goes up over time, and the damage just goes up now. So, like, yes, if you can get the root, the magic damage goes up as you level it, and so does the root duration. But a big piece of it in the past was it starts at 16 seconds and it moves to 12 as you rank it up. So now, is this become a 1-point wonder?
This is, yeah, I know we've argued about this in the past about what's the level second in Karma, and I still don't know.
Yeah,
But I think it is a pretty viable 1-point wonder now.
yeah.
I mean, it's got a lot of uses, and if the cooldown doesn't go down anymore, then I wouldn't level it just for the damage.
I mean,
I prefer
but
the Q and the
you
shield.
would be also leveling. I mean, it doubles the root duration from 1 second to 2, and
I'd still prefer bigger shields and bigger poke.
fair enough.
The landing phase. Alright, let's go on to Lux. Cost on Q has been reduced, as Darius is so happy
Yeah, he's
right now.
jumping for joy.
It was 50 to 90 scaling. It's now 50 to 70 mana scaling, so 20 less mana at max rank. And Light Binding deals 100% of its damage en route to the secondary target as well. My goodness.
I mean, the secondary is a buff to lane phase and a buff to late game. The cost is actually pretty nice. A lot of times when you're sieging with Lux, you're kind of leading with Q and seeing what happens, then maybe going for something else. And just being able to spam that more is useful. I'll compare it to Brand. Brand, a lot of times you leave Q at one point and you kind of spam Q and you siege to see what happens. And by doing that, at that one point, it's a lot of damage for not a lot of mana. And having skills that do more damage for not as much mana is really, really nice when you're sieging on a champion that has quote-unquote mana issues.
It shows how much I play Lux, and I'm sure this is obvious to all Lux players, but see, now is a big threat of queuing through a backline minion to hit you.
Yes.
And open up the rest of their combo. Something I didn't pick up immediately, but how often was Lux trying to do that before, or going around the minions in order to get that full duration and damage?
So this is actually something I talked to Froz when I did my TF video with him. You have to respect when a champion can really punish you if you blow your CC. So if you're sieging against like maybe a Maokai or Diana or something, you may not do this because of how hard you can get punished when you miss it. But if you can't really get punished for missing it, this is a play you go for a lot of the time. It's like TF. If you can't get punished for walking up to them with gold card, you're going to do it a lot. If they have something that can really punish you if your gold card drops, not a play you go for as much because you need to have that CC for them to respect the fact that you can use it and peel backwards.
All right.
So it depends on threat level.
All right, Maokai change.
Oh, this is
our cooldown has been increased by 20% or 20%, 20 seconds at all levels. It was 40, 30, 20. Now it's 60, 50, 40.
I think it's funny because as soon as these patch notes rolled out, Adam texts me Maokai nerfs.
Did he have a tear face with that text message?
I'm sure he wasn't happy about it since Adam only plays in meta champions and Maokai was one of those people in his back pocket for a long time. And I say that hoping he doesn't listen to this, but that's definitely what happens if it's not considered meta. Adam's probably not playing it, so Maokai change. I can understand why he's sad. He doesn't want his favorite tree man to lose a little bit of his bark.
You're trying to go on something and you botched.
No, I didn't. I don't even
If
really.
the cloud was here.
I'm not that worried about coming up with silly jokes for the tree dude, but I can get why you're upset. But at the same time, Maokai's been kind of king of the top mountain for so long for a tank sort of champion. You know, even
ultimate up for every time he wants it.
Right, even like
he wants to fight.
Rise and fall of the Scion era and whatnot. Maokai's always been pretty solid out of top.
I feel this 20 seconds early is a lot more painful than the 20 seconds late. I mean, he's still going to have the ultimate every team fight, but 60 seconds early on means he can't just, all in whenever it feels like it.
The other portion of this too is now you have to make a choice on whether you want to activate it at the perceived beginning or closer to an end of a fight, or even time it better to when they're going to use certain abilities, because now you can't just engage in a fight if it's just a skirmish where they were able to break off. Your ult was going to be back up in 20 seconds to be able to go in again if you can make something happen. But now let's say that you go in and you pop your ult and they were able to keep you at bay. The Maokai's team isn't able to follow up on anything, and now you're kind of back to that playing patty cake mode. He has to wait a lot longer to use that again, so that's a pretty big gap of time that his team can get potentially poked out a little bit harder, or that the enemy team can engage because Maokai doesn't have his ult up.
I wish they had taken a wait-and-see approach to see how Maokai actually did in the Bruiser meta, because his play rate and pick play and solo queue and competitive play has actually gone down for the last patch or two, and he has some issues in Bruiser lanes as well, so I kind of feel like these nerfs should have been a few months ago, and the fact that the meta's changing, maybe actually see how he does. So I don't know. I like the wait-and-see approach for something like this, unless it's a real problem like Skarner.
And that goes almost exactly into what you were talking about earlier, where it isn't necessarily that a champion eats a big buff or a nerf, it's that things get changed around the champion, and that effectively buffs and nerfs them as well. So with the changes to other champions that are very popular in the meta right now, is that in itself a nerf to Maokai? Mm-hmm. And if so, this hurts him pretty bad.
It's like when they buffed
All right.
Cinderhulk, they nerfed Warrior at the same time, and that's kind of like something like this, where you don't want, I don't know, like guy very into science, and rule, or not rule one, but one of the major rules of science is you don't touch two variables
Right.
that interact with each other at the same time. So stuff like this is, I didn't really think he's that big of a problem. I really wish they would have just waited a patch or two.
All right, moving on to Master Yi. Master Yi just had a bug fix where his double strike and Devourer's phantom hit wouldn't reduce the Alpha Strike's cooldown. Oh no. Poor Master Yi. Nocturne. This is the change we've all been waiting for, right? The range of Paranoia has been increased. It is now 2,500, 3,250, and 4,000 at max rank. It's an increase of 5. Thank goodness for Nocturne. I mean, I didn't play Nocturne a lot, but I just felt bad for him.
I'm
Because
really
the ult
happy.
range was so short.
I'm happy for these changes, though. 500 range isn't make or break per se as compared to
No,
what it used to be in the past. But at the same time, were you in my game the other day? Where no, I think I was in a game with a bunch of people from the T-Force TeamSpeak. And I ulted because I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then I forgot his ult range was so short because I hadn't played him in forever. And I was just like, God damn it. I'm 10 feet away from being able to use this. And they just kept walking out of range, not even knowing I was going to come in on them. And I couldn't get it off. So hopefully this fixes that a little bit.
I play
But
a
I
lot
also
of
should have
Noct.
paid way more attention.
And this does one really big thing. And right now, if you try and lane gank on him, and by lane gank I mean kind of like Rengar, where you walk up lane and you actually like gank it, not like bot lane going through bushes. Although you could do that too. The 2,000 is so short. Sometimes you can't even lane gank without like the other person's creep seeing you. If you're trying to gank mid and they're behind wave or something, or if you're trying to gank bot lane, sometimes you have to really get at some awkward angles that go really far in. And 500 really helps this because creeps aren't going to see you at 2,500 now. This really helps lane ganking, and sometimes when you ult, you're just right at the edge and they do something or they get a gap close or just
And that's a wasted ult.
like 2,000 short. This is
Yeah.
It's like 2 Ezreal Qs. This is a big buff.
I do want to revisit Master Yi for a second because chat brought up a good point. Because of that cooldown reduction on his Q when Devour works correctly, according to Nickname My, his Q should have next to no cooldown, which means a lot more invulnerability for him.
So you only get the Ghost Strike every 2 attacks, and I don't feel like this reduces. It means every 2 attacks you get some extra
I mean, yeah,
Q reduction.
you still have to auto attack. I mean, he's not just killing people with Q. It's not like APE anymore.
So let's say the Q cooldown is 6 seconds. I think it's 1 second per auto attack, but you're getting a Ghost Strike every 2 attacks. So right now, it'll take 6 attacks if you're not getting on the Ghost Strike. If you're getting 1 per second, it's 6 seconds. I don't know how accurate these are, but just for argument purposes.
Right.
Now it would be 4 because you're getting on Ghost Strikes, but 4 to 6, I don't know. It doesn't seem like that big a deal. Yi's already so strong when he gets Devour. That's if they actually wanted to like buff Yi or do something, they'd probably touch his early game. This is kind of like,
I mean,
he's a little undertuned. We'll give him a small buff and fix a bug too.
it is a shorter window to shut him down, which I understand can be pretty tough. I mean, as a support player, well, as an ADC, I just roll over and let Yi kill me. But as a support player, I feel like I can actually have a window to stop Yi at some point. And if I got less of a window to do that, yeah, I can see that being an issue. I don't know if this is going to bring Yi to the forefront, though. I don't really see Yi as often as I thought with the Devourer changes.
Q isn't something you spam too. A lot of times the cooldown doesn't matter because let's say if it's 4 seconds, you're still going to sit on it until you have to dodge a skill shot. The only time this matters is if you're going to dodge a skill shot between that 4 seconds and that 6 seconds. But it's not like, I'm going to Q, do damage, be invulnerable, Q. I mean, making yourself invulnerable is awesome, but making yourself invulnerable when they have a stun
At the right time
is stupid.
is a different story, right?
Yeah.
And realistically, it becomes a situation too where Yi can also put out more damage from his autos once he has the right items than he would be from his Q anyway. It's a situation just like if you're playing Caitlyn in your full build and somebody is within auto attack range to just auto them and kill them why are you using your snipe on them? Because and everyone has seen that with somebody who hasn't
Style
played.
points.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It might be style points, but it's not the most effective way to murder somebody.
Okay, I'm actually glad chat commented on Yi because I didn't really think of that when I read the change. I just thought it was a small bug fix.
Right.
Let's move on to Pantheon. So Pantheon's base attack speed has been
Increased barely.
increased.
Yeah.
From 0.625 to 0.644. Too bad Declawed couldn't be on. Declad? Who?
Declad?
Declawed couldn't be on.
Oh God! You know what? If they buff Pantheon a little bit so Declaw doesn't try Titanic Hydra at Pantheon again, I'm alright with that. And I say that because he's not here to defend himself. Love you, buddy. Yeah. I don't know.
Is it buff to jungle Panth?
Yeah.
Doesn't really.
I was trying to think
Panth.
of him versus. I mean, how does he fare against the top junglers right now? I can't imagine he fares very well. Otherwise, we'd be seeing him.
So Pantheon's in an interesting spot in that he's a jungler that deals damage but struggles to clear, which isn't a lot of them. Most of them don't really have issues clearing, and he really needs to get the ganks early. And Pantheon's somebody that you kind of need to know what you're doing when you're jungling, because if you consistently go 0-0-0 or 0-0-1 at 10 minutes, you're just going to be behind on items. And I mean, TLDR, you need to be able to gank and kind of know what you're doing to play Pantheon. But if you do, he's decent. I know some good players who still play him.
You want to snowball as hard as you can early, and to the point where you're doing so much that they can't deal with it, so the game ends before you hit that point where it's like, okay, you can't insta give that person anymore. Well, now they're able to live and you're done. But yeah, I don't know. Small change. In the reverse of the Maokai situation, this is more of one of those like, let's just tweak something a little bit and see how it works.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Rek'Sai, her passive no longer grants 15 bonus fury on her first strike within 5 seconds of burrowing. I didn't know that existed.
Really strong. I don't know if Rek'Sai needed a nerf, but I have absolutely no issue with this. She's been pretty good with Cinderhulk, Titanic Hydra too.
Right.
So I don't know, competitive play is really, really far behind on patches, so I'm kind of going by a lot of what I see in solo queue. But Rek'Sai's strong. I don't know. There's not really much else to say. It's strong champion getting tiny nerf. Probably still strong.
Good point.
I mean, realistically, how many over the course of the game? How much is that 15 bonus damage extra within the first 5 seconds of burrowing really going to add? And again,
it's only going to do something early.
Every little bit counts, but at the same time,
maybe in the first gank or two.
That's less of a nerf than if they just took damage straight off of her Q, or something like that. But
Shen change. The base health per second on his Q has been reduced from 2 to 7.3 scaling. It now scales from 1 to 5. So 1 extra health, base health, refunded
now
per point in the queue.
I haven't seen anybody necessarily play a God mode Shen recently, so I'm not.
Vom, man, he's D4 with above 60% on Shen.
On Shen,
he said this nerf doesn't matter too much because you're usually using your key to harass and not proccing it.
Gotcha. Okay, well that makes sense.
I go with what Mom told me because he's the best Shen I know.
Can't argue with that. I mean, so Riot brings up that they feel like Shen is
too good early.
Right. I mean, he's too much of a rock in lane, too hard to push him out, and they feel like this will help him out a lot. Or not help him out, the opposite.
It should rescind a little bit of take back a little bit of that power. But
again, I'm not a Shen master or anything, but like Volm said, whenever I used Q, I'd use it to harass. Mm-hmm. I would use it for health regen every so often because I'm bad and I need to regen my health, but I don't think this is too big of a deal.
No, it's not.
Tom Kench, his passive. Oh, a second, what? Duration on passive attacks. So his passive, it was 5 seconds, and now 7 seconds.
I think it's the length of how long it's applied for acquired taste. So in the past...
Okay, so when it falls off?
Yeah, it would take 5 seconds to fall off. Now it takes 7 seconds to fall off.
Okay. And they mentioned that matches the duration of stacks applied
Because
from Tongue Lash.
I think Tongue Lash applied 2 extra seconds if you hit it. And I'm just spitballing here because I don't read this any other way other than this. But if you just auto attacked, it'd be 5 seconds. If you Tongue Lashed, acquired taste would last 7 seconds. But now it's just 7 seconds regardless of how you apply the stacks.
Great. And change from Devour, enemy champion regurgitation range has been increased from 100 to 200.
200.
I feel like that's the least you can do for how hard it is to get Devour off an enemy champion.
Right.
Like, hey, if you finally get it off, all right, here's a little bit of extra love.
All right,
Come
so
out farther.
they buffed him a little bit, but again, does that solve the issues Tom's having?
I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen Tom Kench. I think it's 3.
I mean,
and twice was on when he was on my team.
this
in
doesn't
rank 5s.
change enough the fact that he doesn't have an ult that does anything in a situation other than take somebody from A to B. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to be a quality of life change for his passive, but I don't think that's going to do anything to see more Tom Kench in actual play. I don't think that's a big enough buff to be like, oh, hey, Tom's great now.
I mean, it's hard to say how much this is going to help him since, again, we've seen him so infrequently.
Right.
I mean,
That's
but
you know what? That's a good point,
if
too.
this 2 extra seconds is enough to get the full stack of his passive off, then maybe this can help him a lot. But I just don't know.
How many times on Tom, though, do you get stacks and, like, you actually get to get back on them 7 seconds later? He seems like somebody, once you cut him out, you cut him out.
And I've seen Tom Kench's, once they've been kited out, they're done. They've been kited out. He's not getting back to you.
He's in peel mode then.
Yeah.
And the Devourer, too. Like, the only time this really matters for me is if you spit them away from where they want to be and they flash. Their flash is effectively 100 units shorter. But I don't see this mattering that much. Maybe like if you eat somebody in lane when they get ganked or something, you can spit them 100 units further away from where they want to be. But if you eat somebody in lane and you're like spitting them back towards your tower, you're probably winning so hard it probably doesn't matter.
Right. All right.
Okay, sorry.
So
I was
last
just counting
change.
something for the last change, yeah.
Last change is Vi, my good old girl. So they
cooldown
changed
for-
up her passive.
Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah. They changed up Blast Shield, which is her passive, and the cooldown used to go 18 to 13 to 8 at levels 1, 7, and 12, and now it goes down a little bit each level, so 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, all the way down to 8 seconds at max level. So like, what is 17?
So I think it
At
still hits 8
level
seconds every
11, at level 11,
level 11.
she has an 8-second cooldown on her passive, internal cooldown on her passive, which is like, that's a pretty decent
Slight
quality
buff.
of, yeah, that's a decent little quality buff, and it gives her a little bit of extra innate tankiness, because especially early game, 18 seconds is a long time.
Well, it's the same for the. So it used to hit 13, a cooldown of 13 seconds at level 7, and now that's at level 6 too. So yeah, that is a pretty nice buff. It
It's
goes
the
down
break points,
gradually,
yeah.
but you also get that bonus that you would have gotten 1 level sooner.
Right. Well, and I mean, it also becomes a kind of a thing now. The cooldown is what it is at max rank, just like it was in the past. So it's at max level, 8 seconds now. It used to be 8 seconds, but you're gonna hit that 8 seconds a level earlier.
Now, what does this mostly help with? Her team fighting, or I can't remember Vi having any trouble clearing the jungle.
It just
It's-
helps at awkward breakpoints. Like right now, you don't get anything until 7, and now you're incrementally getting things. So
A little
better
bit.
at 2, quite a bit, but even better at 3, even better at 4, even better at 5. A tiny bit better, or a lot better at 6, and then a tiny bit better at 7. And it kind of goes like that up and down. But the thing is, if you were to draw a line of where it used to be, it's always above where it used to be until you hit 12 or 13 now.
I just feel like it's weird for them to do that with cooldown, since the cooldown goes down so gradually. It's still high enough early that I really don't see it proccing that much more often than what it used to be. Mm-hmm. If this was something like damage, like Braum's passive, not Braum, Bard,
Bard's
his
passive.
insanely complicated passive, scales, pretty linearly with level, and the damage just increases slowly over time. And that kind of makes sense. And I think that would make sense with something like Blast Shield. If this did something with damage, if this increased the damage a little bit at each level. It just seems like reducing the cooldown a little bit each level would be harder to utilize.
Well, let's say you're level 4, right? Or level 4 on Vi after the patch. Previously, at level 4, if you were to farm 2 or 3 camps, so let's say you're farming for a minute, at 54 seconds you get your passive 3 times, because 18 times 3 is 54. Now, if you were to farm for that 60 seconds, instead of getting the 3 at 54, you'd get 4 at 60. So, like, if you're doing extended camp or farm of 1 camp or 2 camps, you may get it twice. And as far as 1 camp is, let's say you're level 4 and it's 15. If you're farming that camp for 16 seconds, previously you would have only got it once and it would have came up on your way walking to the second camp. Now get it twice and it'll start to come up again when you're walking to the second camp as well. So just any breakpoint that's, I guess, between current and previous, it's better. And anytime like you're farming for a minute, you're getting it 4 times as opposed to like close to 3 and stuff like that. So it does add up. You kind of have to number crunch a little bit in your head, but...
Alright. Those are all the champion changes. All that's left is some bug fixes on Azir and Zed. So Azir W, same soldiers now work with Sated Devourer, and they fixed a bug where multiple desynced soldiers could deal full damage. And they also fixed a bug with Emperor's Divide, where units could be knocked back too far.
I saw a bunch of people talking on Twitter today on how they were trying out Azir jungle, but it just depresses me.
Yeah, I saw Scar mention that it's horrible.
Yeah.
Zed got some bug fixes as well. So for Q, they fixed a bug where Razor Shuriken sometimes failed to launch if cast shortly after Living Shadow. Then they fixed a bug with Living Shadow, where casting Razor Shuriken before Living Shadow would allow the Shuriken to be cast from the Shadow. And then with Deathmark, they fixed a bug where Zed couldn't swap to a Shadow after reviving from Guardian Angel, which would suck. And they fixed a bug where Deathmark would sometimes spawn a Shadow for the rest of the game, which would be kind of cool.
Yeah, perma shadows.
The GA is pretty bugged on a lot of champs. Like on Mundo, I don't know if it's intended to work like this or not, but if you go into GA with your ultimate running, you'll come out with GA health, so 20 or 25%, I can't even remember what it is, plus how much health you would have regenerated with your ultimate running. So you can like ultimate and come out of GA with like 60 or 70, and it kind of has awkward interactions with a lot of champions. And the other thing is, I'm not a tech guy, I don't know what refactoring means. I assume they said spaghetti code, so they're cleaning up spaghetti's code. I've done a little Python, so I kind of know what that is, but as they continue to release more and more complex champions like Bard and Tom and Azir and Zed, but specifically stuff like Bard and Tom that interacts with other champions. How many of these champions are they going to have to go back and refactor, recode?
And fix later?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be Azir Part 2 and 3 with those.
Azir's going to get a bug fix every patch until like I stop playing this game.
Until the heat death of the universe, Azir is going to have bug fixes.
Yeah.
Never change Azir. Never
I wonder
change.
if the guy who coded him is still working there.
No, he's still working though. He's fixing the bugs.
Yeah.
I'll let him go without fixing all his mistakes.
In fact, that's why so many are left in. He needs to keep his job, so they're just keeping it. He fixes a little bit.
His cubicle.
Yeah.
Don't leave until you fix all the bugs.
He coded everything that only he can fix it because he just put in weird stuff. So he's just slowly taking it back. Yeah.
His job title is probably paying retribution or paying penance.
All right.
I think that's about it.
That's it for the patch. You guys have any closing thoughts? You excited to play on this patch?
Oh no, I'm not really surprised at most of the stuff that we saw in this patch.
Yeah, me neither. Nothing really stood out that much.
Yeah. A bunch of little changes all across the board.
Except for the Draven changes were a surprise. But,
Great for you.
Welcome. Very welcome. All right. Well, that does it for... What episode is this?
290.
290.
Thank you, Chia. 290.
T4 is 290. Why did I know that? Little joke.
Yeah, you're supposed to
never
ask
remember the podcast number unless somebody asks me. I'm usually the first person at the show. What episode is that?
Hashtag lost episode.
Yeah,
hashtag the lost.
Question mark.
The lost
this
episode.
Was. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll check you later.
All right, have a great night, everybody.